The sound of shattering ceramic cut through the din of Jerry's 24-hour diner. Silence swept across the room instantly, replacing the hum of conversation and clinking silverware. Every head turned toward booth 4. There, a small boy, no older than 7, stood on the cracked vinyl seat. His face was a mask of sheer, red-faced devastation, tears streaming down his cheeks in hot, angry tracks. His hands were moving, flying, actually, in frantic, sharp gestures that chopped the air. "For God's sake, can someone shut that kid up?" a trucker at the counter grumbled. Across from the boy, a man in a bespoke suit that cost more than the diner itself looked helpless. He ran a hand through his perfect hair, his expression one of utter defeat. "Leo, please," the man whispered, his voice tight. "I don't know what you want. The burger? The fries? Just stop." The boy didn't stop. He slapped his chest, his mouth opening in a silent scream of frustration that was louder than any noise in the room. He was begging to be heard in a world that refused to listen. Nobody moved. Nobody helped. Until the waitress in the stained blue apron set down her coffee pot and walked over. Mia Collins had been working the graveyard shift at Jerry's for 3 years. She knew the rhythm of this place like the back of her hand. The way the fluorescent lights buzzed at 2 a.m., the specific groan the ice machine made before it needed refilling, the regulars who came in seeking solace in bottomless coffee and mediocre pie. She'd seen fights break out over sports scores, proposals accepted over chicken fried steak, and more tears shed in these vinyl booths than she could count. But this was different. The boys' hands weren't just moving randomly. They were speaking. Mia approached booth 4, ignoring the stares from the other customers. The man in the expensive suit looked up at her with eyes that were exhausted and desperate in equal measure. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd thought, early 30s, maybe. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his tie was loosened like he'd been pulling at it for hours. She didn't look at him. She looked at the boy. She raised her hands and signed, her movements fluid and gentle. "Are you hurt? Or just angry?" The effect was instantaneous. The boy's hands froze mid-gesture. His tear-streaked face turned toward her, eyes wide with shock. For a moment, he just stared, as if he'd seen a ghost. Then his hands began to move again, slower now, more controlled. His small fingers shaped words with the desperate precision of someone who'd been drowning and had just found air. "The pickles," he signed, his face crumpling again. "They touched my fries. I can't eat them. I told him. I told him so many times, but he doesn't understand me. Nobody understands me." Mia felt her heart crack open. She glanced at the plate in front of the boy, a cheeseburger with the pickles removed, sitting next to a pile of French fries. The pickle juice had indeed seeped over, leaving dark spots on several fries. She turned to the man in the suit, who was staring at her like she'd just performed a miracle. "He's allergic to pickles," Mia said softly. "Or at least, he can't stand them touching his food." The juice got on his fries. The man's face went pale. I didn't know. I asked them to hold the pickles. I thought that was enough." His voice broke slightly. I didn't understand what he was trying to tell me. Mia picked up the plate. "Let me get him a fresh order. And this time, I'll make sure the pickles never get anywhere near the plate." She turned back to the boy and signed. "I'm going to fix this. 2 minutes. I promise." The boy nodded, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. His shoulders were still shaking, but the tears had stopped. Mia walked back to the kitchen, acutely aware that every eye in the diner was still on booth 4. She could hear the whispers starting up again, the judgment, the speculation. "Weird kid," someone muttered. "Rich people," another voice scoffed. "Probably never told that brat no in his life." Mia pushed through the swinging door, her jaw tight. In the kitchen, she found Jerry himself manning the grill, his weathered face gleaming with sweat. "Jerry, I need a cheeseburger and fries, but the pickles can't even be in the same kitchen space. Can you?" "Say no more, kid." Jerry wiped his hands on his apron. "I saw what happened out there. That was something else, the way you talked to that boy." "I didn't talk," Mia said quietly, watching as Jerry started fresh fries and clean oil. "I listened." 5 minutes later, she returned to booth 4 with a fresh plate. She'd garnished it with a small American flag toothpick, something Leo could claim as a prize, a small acknowledgement that he'd been heard. She set it down in front of him and signed. Safe. No pickles anywhere. Leo looked at the plate, then up at her. Slowly, carefully, he He picked up a French fry and ate it. His face transformed, the devastation melting into something that looked like wonder. "Thank you," he signed, his small hands forming the gesture with exaggerated care, bringing his fingertips from his chin outward toward her, the universal sign of gratitude. "You're welcome," Mia signed back, then added with a small smile. "The flag is yours to keep." For the first time since she'd approached the table, Leo smiled. It was a small thing, hesitant and fragile, but it lit up his whole face. The man in the suit cleared his throat. I don't know how to thank you." His voice was rough, and when Mia finally looked at him directly, she saw that his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "How did you know sign language?" "My grandmother," Mia said simply, not elaborating. The memories of her Nana teaching her signs in the kitchen of their small apartment, the way the older woman's hands had shaped words when her voice had failed her, those were private. Sacred. The man pulled out his wallet, and Mia felt her defenses go up immediately. She'd seen this before, wealthy people trying to throw money at problems, at guilt, at anything that made them uncomfortable. But he didn't pull out cash. He pulled out a business card, embossed and heavy, the kind that probably cost more per card than she made in tips on a good night. "Julian Thorne," he said, handing it to her. "I'm the CEO of Thorne Technologies. And this is my son, Leo." Mia took the card, more out of politeness than interest. The name tickled something in her memory. Tech news, articles about innovations, something about quantum computing that had been over her head. "I need you to work for me," Julian said, his words coming out in a rush. "I need someone who can communicate with Leo. Someone who can teach me how to communicate with him. I'll pay whatever." "I have a job," Mia interrupted, gesturing around the diner. "I'll pay you more. Triple. Quadruple. Name your price." Mia felt a flash of irritation. Of course. Money. That's what men like him always thought would solve everything. "Mr. Thorne, I appreciate the offer, but—" "Please," Leo signed, his small hands moving with desperate hope. "Please stay. Please help." And just like that, Mia's resistance crumbled. She looked at this small boy who'd been screaming to be heard in the only way he knew how, and she knew she couldn't walk away. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Julian reached into his wallet again, and this time he did pull out cash. He placed it on the table, far too much for a burger and fries, even with the extra order. Mia glanced down and felt her breath catch. 10 $100 bills, neatly arranged. "That's too much," she said immediately. "It's not nearly enough." Julian stood, helping Leo down from the booth. "Please, call me. Tomorrow. I need someone like you in Leo's life. In our lives." He placed his hand gently on Leo's shoulder, and the boy leaned into him, tired now, the emotional storm having passed. As they walked toward the door, Leo turned back and waved at Mia, not a casual wave, but the deliberate sign language gesture, his hand opening and closing like a butterfly's wings. Mia waved back the same way, her throat tight. After they left, she looked down at the business card in one hand and the money in the other. The card was simple but elegant. Julian Thorne, CEO, Thorne Technologies. Building tomorrow's solutions. Underneath was a phone number and an email address. Jerry emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "You gonna call him?" "I don't know," Mia said honestly. "This is crazy, Jerry. I'm a waitress, not a governess or whatever he's looking for." "You're a woman who knows how to listen," Jerry corrected. "That little boy needs someone like that. Hell, sounds like his daddy does too." Mia slipped the card into her apron pocket and picked up the money. She'd put it toward her student loans, the mountain of debt that never seemed to get smaller no matter how many double shifts she worked. But even as she thought it, she knew that wasn't what this was about. That night, as she finished her shift and walked home through the quiet streets, she couldn't stop thinking about Leo's face. About the way he'd looked at her when she'd signed to him, like she'd given him the greatest gift in the world. She'd just listened. That was all. But sometimes, listening was everything. Mia called the number the next morning, telling herself she was just exploring options. A crisp, professional voice answered, Julian's assistant, who scheduled her for an interview that very afternoon at the Thorne residence. Now, standing in front of the building, Mia was having serious second thoughts. The Thorne penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a sleek glass tower in the heart of the city. The lobby alone was more intimidating than anywhere Mia had ever been. All marble and chrome, with a security desk that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. The doorman had actually checked a list before allowing her to enter, as if she might be an imposter pretending to be a waitress from Jerry's diner. The elevator was glass-walled, offering a view of the city as it climbed. Mia watched the ground fall away, feeling like she was ascending into another world entirely, which, she supposed, she was. When the doors opened, she stepped directly into the penthouse. No hallway, no buffer, just straight into a massive living space that looked like it had been designed by someone who valued aesthetics over comfort. Everything was glass, steel, and sharp edges. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The furniture was modern and geometric, all hard lines and uncomfortable-looking angles. The color scheme was monotone, grays, blacks, whites. Not a single splash of color anywhere. It looked like a museum, or a prison made of light. Miss Collins. Julian emerged from what appeared to be a home office, looking slightly less polished than he had at the diner. He'd traded the suit jacket for just a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, and his hair was slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Thorne," Mia said, her voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. "This is quite a place. Please, call me Julian." He gestured for her to sit on one of the angular couches. "Can I get you something? Coffee? Water?" Mia sat carefully, feeling like the furniture might reject her as an imposter at any moment. "I'm fine, thank you. Where's Leo?" "At school. He'll be home in an hour." Julian sat across from her, his posture stiff and formal despite the casual dress. "I wanted to talk to you first, to explain the situation." "I'm listening." Julian leaned forward, clasping his hands together. "Leo lost his hearing when he was 4. Meningitis. The doctors did everything they could, but he swallowed hard. My wife, ex-wife, she left 6 months later. She said she couldn't handle having a disabled child, that it wasn't what she signed up for." Mia felt a surge of anger but kept her expression neutral. "I see. I've tried everything," Julian continued, his voice taking on a desperate edge. "The best schools, the best therapists, private tutors. But Leo keeps pulling away from all of them. He's angry all the time. And I don't," his voice cracked. "I don't know how to reach him. Last night at the diner was the calmest I've seen him in months, and that was all because of you." "It wasn't magic, Mr. Thorne, Julian," Mia said gently. "I just spoke his language." "Exactly." Julian pulled out a tablet, swiping through screens. "I'm prepared to offer you a position as Leo's companion and tutor for the summer. 3 months. I'll pay you $15,000 a month, plus room and board if you want to live here, though that's not required. Your job would be to spend time with Leo, help him with his communication skills, and—" He paused, looking uncomfortable. "Teach me how to communicate with him." Mia blinked. $45,000. That would wipe out a significant chunk of her student loans. It was more money than she'd make in a year at the diner. But something about the way Julian had phrased it bothered her. "Fix him," she said quietly. "That's what you're really asking, isn't it? You want me to fix your son?" Julian's expression flickered, surprise, then something that might have been shame. "I know that's not." "He's not broken," Mia interrupted, her voice firm. "Julian, your son is a bright, sensitive boy who's been trying to communicate in the only way he knows how, and nobody's been listening. The problem isn't Leo. The problem is that you don't speak his language." The words hung in the air between them. Mia watched Julian's face cycle through emotions, defensiveness, anger, and finally, something that looked like recognition. "You're right," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're absolutely right. I've been so focused on finding ways to help him that I never stopped to think that maybe I'm the one who needs help. I'm the one who's failing." The raw honesty in his voice caught Mia off guard. She'd expected him to argue, to defend himself with the same money and power he'd wielded so easily. But instead, he looked broken, vulnerable. "I'll take the job," Mia heard herself say. "But not because of the money, and not to fix Leo. I'll do it because that little boy deserves to have someone in his life who understands him. And because I think you genuinely want to be that person. You just don't know how yet." Julian looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw real hope in his eyes. "Thank you. Thank you so much. When can you start?" "I need to give Jerry notice at the diner. 2 weeks. I'll pay Jerry whatever he needs to hire a replacement immediately," Julian said quickly. "You could start tomorrow." Mia almost smiled. Of course he thought money could solve that too. It's not about the money. It's about not leaving Jerry in the lurch. He's been good to me. I'll start in 2 weeks, and I'll come by for a few hours each evening until then to get Leo comfortable with me. Deal. Julian extended his hand. Deal. As they shook hands, Mia heard the elevator ding. A moment later, a small figure burst into the penthouse, backpack bouncing on his shoulders. Leo froze when he saw Mia. His eyes went wide, and then his face split into the biggest smile she'd seen from him yet. You came, he signed, dropping his backpack and running toward her. You really came. Dad said you might, but I thought maybe he was lying because grown-ups lie sometimes, but you're really here. His hands were moving so fast that Mia had to concentrate to keep up. She laughed and signed back. I'm really here, and I'm going to be spending a lot of time with you. Is that okay? Leo nodded so vigorously his whole body shook. Then he grabbed her hand and started pulling her toward what she assumed was his room, signing rapidly about a drawing he wanted to show her. Mia glanced back at Julian, who was watching them with an expression of profound longing and sadness. She gave him an encouraging nod before allowing Leo to pull her down the hallway. Leo's room was a revelation. Unlike the sterile perfection of the rest of the penthouse, this space was alive with color and chaos. The walls were covered in drawings, rockets, planets, stars, constellations. Models of the solar system hung from the ceiling. Books were scattered everywhere, most of them about space and astronomy. This is amazing, Mia signed, turning in a slow circle. Did you draw all of these? Leo nodded proudly. Space is quiet, he sighed. Like me, the stars don't make noise. They just shine. Mia felt her throat tighten. This beautiful, brilliant boy had found comfort in the silence of space because it was the only silence that didn't feel lonely. She spent the next hour looking at Leo's drawings, learning about his favorite constellations, and watching his face light up as he explained, through signs and gestures and occasional written words, the difference between planets and stars, between comets and asteroids. When she finally left, promising to return the next evening, Julian walked her to the elevator. He hasn't been that animated in months, Julian said quietly. Maybe years. What did you do? I asked him about his interests, Mia said simply. I let him talk. Really talk. As the elevator doors began to close, she added, and Julian, you should know, that room of his, with all the color and life, that's who he really is. The rest of this place. She gestured to the pristine, cold penthouse. This isn't a home. It's a cage. If you want to reach your son, you need to meet him in his world, not force him into yours. The elevator doors closed on Julian's stunned expression. As Mia descended back to ground level, back to her world of diners and student debt and cramped apartments, she wondered what she'd just gotten herself into. But when she thought of Leo's smile, of the way his eyes had lit up when she'd signed to him about the stars, she knew she'd made the right choice. Some things were worth more than money. Some things were worth everything. The first 2 weeks were a revelation. Mia came every evening after her shifts at Jerry's, her apron still smelling of coffee and grease, and spent 3 hours with Leo. At first, she focused solely on him, learning his rhythms, his preferences, his humor. She discovered that he loved terrible puns, signed. They were somehow even more terrible, that he was afraid of thunderstorms because the vibrations made him feel like the world was falling apart, and that his favorite food was spaghetti because he liked the way the noodles felt in his mouth. But she also noticed the way Leo's eyes would track his father across the room, hungry for attention. The way Julian would hover in doorways, watching them interact, his expression a mixture of longing and loss. On the third day, Mia changed tactics. No, she said firmly when Julian tried to retreat to his office. You're joining us. Julian looked startled. I have a conference call in 30 minutes. Reschedule it. Mia pointed to the floor where she and Leo were sitting, a pile of art supplies spread between them. This is more important than any call. Miss Collins, I appreciate what you're doing, but I pay you to work with Leo, not to manage my schedule. Dad, Leo signed, his small face crumpling with disappointment. Please. Julian's resistance crumbled immediately. He set down his phone and lowered himself to the floor, looking uncomfortable and out of place in his pressed slacks and button-down shirt. Good, Mia said. Now, we're going to play a game. It's called No Phone Zone. For the next hour, no phones, no tablets, no work. Just us. And we're only going to communicate through signs. No speaking aloud. Julian's eyes widened. But I don't know. Mia placed a finger over her lips and shook her head, then began to sign slowly. That's the point. You learn by doing. Leo will teach you. What followed was one of the most beautifully awkward hours Mia had ever witnessed. Julian, this brilliant CEO who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions without breaking a sweat, fumbled through basic signs like a toddler learning to speak. His fingers tangled when he tried to spell his name. He kept forgetting that the sign for yes was a fist nodding like a head, not a thumbs up. He accidentally signed toilet when he meant bathroom, and looked mortified when Leo dissolved into giggles. But he kept trying. And Leo, patient and gentle in a way that broke Mia's heart, guided his father's hands into the right shapes, corrected his mistakes with encouragement rather than frustration, taught his father the way Mia had taught him, with kindness and repetition. By the end of the hour, Julian had learned a dozen basic signs. And more importantly, he'd laughed, really laughed, when he'd accidentally signed butterfly cheese instead of please. You're getting better, Leo signed to his father, his small face serious. Keep practicing. Julian signed back, his movements careful and deliberate. I will. I promise. The look that passed between father and son in that moment was worth more than any paycheck Mia would ever receive. When Mia officially started her position 2 weeks later, she implemented what she called the rules. Rule 1. No phone zone from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. every weekday. No exceptions. Rule 2. Family dinner at the table, not in front of screens. Conversation conducted in signs. Rule 3. Bedtime stories signed, not read aloud from an audiobook app. Julian protested at first. He had investors to call, emails to answer, crises to manage. But Mia stood firm. You hired me to help you connect with your son, she said. I can't do that if you're not present. Really present. So Julian adapted. He moved his conference calls. He delegated more to his team. He learned to disconnect. And slowly, the cold glass penthouse began to warm. Mia brought color into the space, not by redecorating, but by living. She and Leo painted pictures and hung them on the previously bare walls. They built a blanket fort in the living room and declared it a no grown-ups allowed zone, until Julian learned the sign for please well enough to beg for entry. They made spaghetti together, getting sauce everywhere, and for once, Julian didn't care about the mess. The transformation in Leo was remarkable. The angry, frustrated boy from the diner melted away, revealing a child who was curious and bright, and so desperately starved for connection that he bloomed under the smallest amount of attention. But the transformation in Julian was equally striking. Mia watched as this rigid, controlled man learned to laugh at his own mistakes, as he got down on the floor without worrying about his expensive clothes, as he traded his tablet for colored pencils and drew terrible stick-figure rockets that made Leo giggle. And somewhere in all of this, something shifted between Mia and Julian too. It happened late one night, 3 weeks into her employment. Mia had started staying later and later, often until after Leo's bedtime. She told herself it was because she wanted to make sure the bedtime routine was solid, but the truth was more complicated than that. This particular evening, she'd just finished signing a story to Leo, a tale about a brave astronaut who traveled to distant planets. Leo had fallen asleep halfway through, his small face peaceful in the glow of his star projector nightlight. Mia covered him with his constellation-patterned blanket and slipped out of the room, pulling the door almost closed behind her. She found Julian in the kitchen, making tea. He'd shed his usual armor of dress shirts and slacks for jeans and a soft gray t-shirt. His feet were bare. His hair was mussed. He looked younger like this. More human. Coffee? He asked, then smiled slightly. Or tea? I'm trying to cut back on the caffeine. Apparently, I'm too wound up. Someone's words, not mine. Mia smiled, recognizing her own advice. Tea sounds good. They worked in comfortable silence, Julian preparing 2 mugs while Mia leaned against the counter. The kitchen was the one room in the penthouse that had started to feel lived in. There were crayon drawings magnetized to the fridge, a container of Leo's favorite cookies on the counter, a coffee ring from where Julian had set his mug down without a coaster, something that would have horrified him weeks ago. He fell asleep during the story, Mia said. The one about the astronaut. That's his favorite, Julian replied, handing her a mug. Or at least, It was mine when I was his age. My father used to read it to me before he stopped abruptly. Before he what? Julian was quiet for a long moment, staring into his tea. Before he decided his company was more important than his family. I barely saw him growing up. I swore I'd never be like that with my own kids. You're not, Mia said gently. I was. Julian's voice was rough. Until you showed up, I was exactly like him. Throwing money at the problem, hiring people to fill in the gaps, telling myself I was doing it all for Leo when really, I was just hiding. Because it's easier to run a company than to face the fact that my son was suffering and I didn't know how to help him. He looked up at her then, and the vulnerability in his eyes made Mia's breath catch. You've given me my son back, Julian said quietly. These past few weeks. I've learned more about Leo than I knew in the 3 years since he lost his hearing. I've seen him laugh and create and communicate in ways I didn't think were possible. And it's all because of you. It's because of you too, Mia corrected. You showed up. You put in the work. You learned his language. That's all Leo ever wanted. For you to try. They stood there in the kitchen, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, and something electric seemed to hum in the air between them. Julian took a step closer. Then another. He was close enough now that Mia could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell the faint scent of his cologne, something clean and expensive that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Mia, he said, his voice low. I need you to know that this, what I'm feeling, it's not just gratitude. Mia's heart was racing. Julian. I know it's complicated, he continued, the words coming out in a rush. I know I'm your employer, and that there's a power dynamic and a dozen reasons why this is a bad idea. But I can't stop thinking about you. The way you light up when Leo signs something new. The way you laugh at my terrible fingerspelling. The way you've brought warmth and color and life into this place. Into us. He reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to step back, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered there, warm against her skin. Tell me I'm not imagining this, he whispered. Tell me you feel it too. Mia should have stepped back. Should have reminded him about professional boundaries and the fact that she was still just a waitress playing dress-up in his world. Should have protected her heart from the inevitable moment when this fairy tale would end and she'd have to return to her real life. But instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, her eyes closing briefly at the tenderness of it. You're not imagining it, she whispered back. Julian exhaled, the sound shaky with relief. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. His head dipped slightly, his lips inches from hers. And then a small voice, or rather, a small hand slapping against the wall, interrupted them. They sprang apart to find Leo standing in the hallway in his rocket ship pajamas, his hair sticking up at odd angles. He looked sleepy and confused. Bad dream, he signed. Can I have water? Of course, buddy. Julian signed back, his movements much more fluid now than they'd been weeks ago. He poured a glass of water while Mia knelt down to Leo's level. Want to tell me about it? She signed. Leo shook his head, drinking his water in small sips. Then he looked between his father and Mia, his small forehead wrinkling with thought. Are you going to be my new mom? He sighed. Mia felt her face flame red. Julian made a choking sound. No, Mia signed quickly. I'm your friend. Your teacher. Oh. Leo looked disappointed. I think you'd be a good mom. You're nice. And you don't yell even when I'm bad. You're not bad. Mia signed firmly. You're wonderful. Now, back to bed, astronaut. Tomorrow we're going to the planetarium, remember? Leo's face lit up. He'd been begging to go for weeks, and Mia had finally convinced Julian to take an entire day off for the excursion. After Leo was tucked back in, this time with Julian doing the tucking and signing the rest of the astronaut story, Mia gathered her things to leave. Julian walked her to the elevator. About what Leo said, he began. It's fine, Mia said quickly, her face still hot. He's 7. He doesn't understand. I want him to be right, Julian interrupted. Not now, not like this. But someday. Mia, I want this to be real. I want you in our lives. Not as an employee. As more. The elevator dinged, the doors sliding open. Mia stepped inside, her heart a wild thing in her chest. Ask me again when the summer's over, she said. When I'm not working for you. When we can figure out if this is real, or just a moment. It's real, Julian said with quiet certainty. But I'll wait. I'll wait as long as you need. The doors began to close. Julian. Mia called out. Yes. She signed, her hands forming the words carefully. Thank you for letting me in. He signed back, his smile visible even as the doors closed between them. Thank you for teaching me how to open the door. As the elevator descended, Mia pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart race beneath her palm. She was in dangerous territory now. She'd crossed a line that she couldn't uncross. But when she thought of Leo's smile, of Julian's transformation, of the family that was slowly knitting itself back together, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Not yet. Absolutely not. Julian set down his coffee cup with more force than necessary, the sharp clink echoing through the penthouse's dining room. Margaret Chun, his steely-eyed PR director, didn't even blink. Julian, the Thorn Foundation Gala is in 3 days. You've already canceled twice. The board is getting restless. The board can deal with it. The board is made up of your investors, Margaret said crisply. And several of them have expressed concerns about your withdrawal from public life. They want to see you. More importantly, they want to see that you're still the Julian Thorn they invested in. Confident, present, in control. From where she sat with Leo at the breakfast table, helping him with his weekend homework, Mia watched the conversation unfold. She'd been working with the Thorns for 6 weeks now, and she'd grown accustomed to these impromptu business meetings that invaded their carefully structured family time. What's wrong? Leo signed to Mia, his small face worried. He could feel the tension in the room, even if he couldn't hear the raised voices. Just grown-up stuff, Mia signed back. Nothing for you to worry about. But Leo was watching his father's face, reading the stress lines around Julian's eyes with the perception of a child who'd learned to read emotions instead of tones. Margaret continued, relentless. The gala is a crucial networking opportunity. Elias Vance will be there. All the more reason not to go, Julian muttered. And he's been circling your investors like a shark, telling anyone who'll listen that you've lost your edge, that your personal problems are affecting your business judgment. Margaret's voice softened slightly. You need to show them that's not true. You need to show them the Julian Thorn who built this company from nothing. Julian dragged a hand through his hair, a gesture Mia had come to recognize as his tell when he was about to give in to something he didn't want to do. Fine, he said finally. I'll go. 2 hours, maximum. I'll make an appearance, schmooze a few investors, and leave. Wonderful, Margaret said, gathering her tablet. I've already had your tux cleaned in. We should all go, Mia heard herself say. 3 heads swiveled toward her. Margaret looked scandalized. Julian looked shocked. Leo looked hopeful. I mean, Mia continued, her heart pounding but her voice steady. If the point is to show the investors that you're balanced and present, wouldn't it be more powerful to bring Leo? To show them that you're not choosing between being a father and being a CEO, that you can be both. Margaret's expression shifted from scandalized to calculating. Actually, that's not a terrible idea. The optics would be. Absolutely not, Julian said firmly. These events are loud, chaotic, overstimulating. Leo would hate it. What would I hate? Leo signed, his eyes darting between them. Mia turned to him and signed. There's a big fancy party in a few days. Your dad has to go for work. I suggested maybe we could all go together. What do you think? Leo's face lit up. A party? With music and dancing? Sort of. It's more standing around talking than dancing. And it might be very crowded and bright. Lots of people. Leo's enthusiasm dimmed slightly, but didn't disappear. Would you be there? If you wanted me to be, yes. And Dad? Of course. Leo thought about this for a moment, then signed. I want to go. I've never been to one of Dad's work things. I want to see what he does. Julian looked helpless. Leo, buddy, it's not going to be fun. It's just a bunch of boring adults. I want to try, Leo signed firmly. You always tell me to try new things. This is a new thing. Margaret's smile was sharp and satisfied. Out of the mouths of babes. I'll arrange for formal wear for Leo. Mia, I assume you have something appropriate to wear. Mia thought of her closet, mostly jeans, t-shirts, and her waitressing uniform. The fanciest thing she owned was a black dress she'd bought for her college graduation 4 years ago. I'll figure something out, she said. No need. Margaret was already typing on her tablet. I'll send over a stylist. This is a Thorn Foundation event. You're representing the family. You need to look the part. After Margaret left, Julian approached Mia while Leo was absorbed in his workbook. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. I know galas aren't your thing. How do you know what my thing is? Mia challenged gently. Because I've watched you be uncomfortable every time someone mentions money or wealth or any of this. He gestured around the penthouse. You're doing this for Leo, not for yourself. Is that so bad? Julian's expression softened. No, it's one of the things I love. He stopped himself. One of the things I admire about you. But these events can be vicious. People will judge you. They'll ask invasive questions. They'll look down on you for not being part of their world. Let them, Mia said simply. I'm not ashamed of who I am or where I come from. Are you? The question hung between them, sharp and challenging. No, Julian said finally. I'm not. I just don't want to see you hurt. I'm tougher than I look, Mia assured him. She had no idea how much she'd need that toughness in 3 days' time. The stylist Margaret sent over was a whirlwind of a woman named Sasha, who took one look at Mia and declared her a blank canvas with excellent bone structure. Mia wasn't sure if that was a compliment. Sasha brought an entire rack of dresses, each more stunning and expensive than the last. Mia felt dizzy looking at the price tags she wasn't supposed to see. This one, Sasha declared, pulling out a deep emerald green gown. It'll make your eyes pop, and the color is bold without being attention-seeking. Perfect for someone who's there to support, not to be the star. The dress was beautiful, a fitted bodice with a flowing skirt that moved like water. The back dipped low, elegant rather than scandalous. It was the kind of dress Mia had never imagined herself wearing. When she tried it on, even she had to admit that Sasha was right. The dress transformed her from waitress playing dress-up to someone who looked like she belonged in Julian's world. Almost. Leo's reaction when he saw her on the night of the gala was worth every moment of discomfort. You look like a princess, he signed, his eyes huge. A space princess. Thank you. Mia signed back, her heart swelling. You look very handsome. Leo was dressed in a miniature tux that made him look impossibly grown-up and heartbreakingly young at the same time. His hair was combed neatly, and someone had even convinced him to wear dress shoes instead of his beloved astronaut sneakers. Julian emerged from his room last, and Mia felt her breath catch. She'd seen him in suits before, but this was different. The tuxedo was perfectly tailored, emphasizing his broad shoulders and lean frame. His hair was styled, but not overly so. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. Powerful, sophisticated, completely in his element. When his eyes landed on Mia, he stopped mid-step. Wow, he said simply. Mia felt heat creep up her cheeks. Sasha's doing. She's a miracle worker. No, Julian said, his voice low and intense. That's all you. Are we going to stand here all night, or are we going to this party? Leo signed impatiently. Julian laughed and signed back. Sorry, buddy. We're going. Everyone ready? Leo nodded enthusiastically. Mia took a deep breath and nodded too. As they stepped into the elevator, Leo reached out and took both Mia's hand and Julian's hand, linking them together. We look like a real family. He signed with his free hand, his face glowing with happiness. Mia caught Julian's eye over Leo's head. The emotion in his gaze made her chest tight. For tonight, at least, they could pretend that's exactly what they were. The Thorn Foundation Gala was held at the Grand Metropolis Hotel, in a ballroom that probably cost more to rent for one night than Mia made in a year. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. The walls were draped in silver and gold. A full orchestra played at one end of the room while elegantly dressed servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that were more art than food. It was overwhelming and beautiful and utterly terrifying. Mia felt every eye in the room turn toward them as they entered. She could practically hear the whispers, the speculation. Who's that with Julian Thorne? Is that his son? I thought he kept him hidden away. She doesn't look like she belongs here. Julian must have sensed her tension because he leaned in close and whispered, You're doing great. Just smile and stay close. Leo was wide-eyed, taking in everything. The lights, the people, the grandeur. Mia could see him starting to feel overwhelmed by the sensory input, the vibrations from the music, the crush of people, the brightness. You okay? She signed. It's loud, he signed back. Not sound loud. Feeling loud. Everything is vibrating. We can leave any time you want, Mia assured him. Just let me know. Leo nodded and squeezed her hand tighter. They made their way through the crowd, Julian stopping every few feet to shake hands and exchange pleasantries. Mia watched him shift into his CEO persona, confident, charming, in complete control. This was his world, and he commanded it effortlessly. But his hand never left the small of her back, a constant, grounding presence. Julian, there you are. A silver-haired man in an expensive tux approached, his smile wide and politician bright. We were beginning to think you'd become a hermit. Robert, Julian said smoothly. Good to see you. You know my son, Leo. Robert's smile faltered slightly as he looked at Leo, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. Ah, yes. The boy. How is he managing? The condescension in his tone made Mia's blood boil, but Julian's expression remained pleasant. He's thriving, actually. Leo, this is Mr. Jameson. He's on the foundation board. Leo, perfectly polite, signed. Nice to meet you. Robert looked confused. Is he? What's he doing with his hands? Signing, Mia said, her voice sweet but with an edge. It's called American Sign Language. Leo is deaf, not incapable of communication. Robert's face flushed. Oh, I see. Well, that's unfortunate. What did he say? Leo signed to Mia. Nothing important, Mia signed back. He's just being ignorant. Julian's hand tightened slightly on her back. Whether in warning or support, she wasn't sure. If you'll excuse us, Julian said to Robert, his tone making it clear it wasn't really a request. We need to make the rounds. As they moved away, Mia heard Robert mutter to someone nearby, bringing the deaf child to an event like this. What was he thinking? Julian must have heard it too because his jaw tightened, but he kept walking. The next hour was a gauntlet of similar interactions. Some people were genuinely kind and curious about Leo. Others treated him like he was invisible or spoke about him in the third person as if he couldn't understand anything. Mia's respect for Julian grew with each encounter. He handled every awkward moment with grace, educating when he could, shutting down rudeness with quiet authority. And more importantly, he made sure Leo was included in every conversation, translating when necessary, signing along when possible. But Mia could see the toll it was taking on Leo. His shoulders were tensing up. His smile was becoming forced. His hands were starting to shake slightly, a sign she'd learned meant he was getting overstimulated. She leaned close to Julian. We need to find somewhere quiet. Leo's reaching his limit. Julian nodded immediately. There's a balcony through those doors. Less crowded. They were making their way toward the doors when a voice stopped them cold. Julian Thorne. Still playing the devoted father, I see. Mia turned to see a man in his 40s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. She'd never seen him before, but she recognized the predatory gleam in his gaze. Julian's entire body went rigid. Elias Vance, the rival CEO Margaret had mentioned. And you brought your family. Elias's gaze swept over Mia and Leo with barely concealed disdain. How progressive of you. Though I have to say, Julian, hiring a governess and parading her around as if she's one of us seems a bit desperate, even for you. Mia felt the words like a slap, but she kept her expression neutral. Julian's voice was ice. Mia is a valued member of my household and a guest at this event. You will speak to her with respect or not at all. Of course, of course. Elias held up his hands in mock surrender. No offense intended. I'm sure she's very good at her job. The pause before job was deliberate and insulting. Dad, who is this man? Leo signed. I don't like him. He feels mean. Out of the mouths of babes indeed, Mia thought. Julian signed back. Just someone I work with. We're leaving now. But Elias wasn't done. Before you go, Julian, I wanted to mention, I've been speaking with several of your board members. They're concerned about your recent absence from the business world. Some are questioning whether you're still the right person to lead Thorne Technologies into the future, especially with your personal complications. He glanced meaningfully at Leo. The implication was clear. Your son is a liability. You're a liability because of your son. Mia felt Julian go absolutely still beside her. She could practically feel the rage radiating off him, tightly controlled but volcanic beneath the surface. My personal complications, Julian said, his voice dangerously soft, have taught me more about leadership, patience, and what truly matters than all my years in boardrooms ever did. My son is not a complication. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. He paused, and when he continued, his voice was strong and clear enough that people nearby turned to listen. Leo is deaf, yes, but he's also brilliant, creative, and compassionate. He's teaching me to slow down, to really listen, to value communication over noise. And if my board members can't see the value in that, if they can't understand that being a good father makes me a better CEO, not a worse one, then perhaps they're not the kind of investors I want in my company. Several people had stopped talking now, watching the confrontation unfold. Julian turned to Leo and began to sign, his movements clear and deliberate for everyone to see. I love you. I'm proud of you. You are perfect exactly as you are. Leo's eyes filled with tears, the good kind. He signed back. I love you too, Dad. Then Julian did something that shocked everyone, Mia included. He knelt down, right there in the middle of the ballroom in his $1,000 tux, and pulled Leo into a tight hug. Then he stood, took Mia's hand in one of his and Leo's hand in the other, and walked toward the exit with his head held high. Behind them, Mia could hear the whispers exploding. But she didn't care, because Julian had just declared, in front of everyone who mattered in his business world, exactly where his priorities lay. They made it to the balcony, blessedly empty and quiet, before any of them spoke. That was... Mia started. Stupid. Julian finished, running his free hand through his hair. Probably. I may have just tanked several important relationships. You were brave, Leo signed. You stood up for me. Julian knelt down again, this time just for his son, not for an audience. Always, he signed. I will always stand up for you. I'm sorry it took me so long to learn how. You're learning now, Leo signed. That's what matters. Mia watched father and son embrace, and felt her heart crack open completely. She'd fallen in love with Julian Thorne, not because he was rich or powerful or could command a room with his presence, but because when it mattered most, he chose love over everything else. The fallout from the gala was swift and brutal. By the next morning, 3 board members had called requesting emergency meetings. 2 major investors had sent concerned emails, and tech news sites were buzzing with speculation about Julian's public breakdown and what it meant for Thorne Technologies' future. Mia watched Julian field call after call from his home office, his face growing more drawn with each conversation. She'd taken Leo to the park to give Julian space, but she could feel the tension radiating from the penthouse even from blocks away. When they returned that afternoon, they found Julian in the living room with Margaret, both of them looking grim. We need damage control, Margaret was saying. A statement, an interview, something to reassure the investors that you're still focused on the company. No, Julian's voice was flat. I'm not apologizing for what I said. I meant every word. I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking you to be strategic. Elias Vance is using this to poach your investors. He's telling everyone that you've lost your edge, that your personal life is interfering with your business judgment. My personal life is my business, Julian said sharply. When did we start believing that being a good father makes someone a bad CEO? Margaret sighed. You're right. You're absolutely right. But the business world doesn't always operate on what's right. It operates on perception. And right now, the perception is... Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. What? Julian demanded. Elias just announced a new partnership with 3 of your major investors. He's positioning it as a vote of confidence in traditional leadership values. Julian swore under his breath. Mia felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just business maneuvering anymore. This was war. Is everything okay? Leo signed, picking up on the tension. Just some work problems, Mia signed back. Nothing for you to worry about. But she was worried. Very worried. The attack came 2 days later, and it came for Mia. She was at the grocery store, doing a supply run for the week, when a man in an expensive suit approached her in the produce aisle. Mia Collins? She turned, immediately on guard. Yes. Elias Vance. He extended a hand that she didn't shake. I wanted to introduce myself properly, since our first meeting was so public. I have nothing to say to you. Mia turned back to the vegetables. Not even if I have information about your employment with Julian Thorne? That made her pause. She turned back slowly. What are you talking about? Elias smiled, but it was the smile of a shark. Did you know that Julian has been paying you well above market rate for a governess? Some might call it suspicious, especially given how close you 2 seem to be. Mia felt her face heat. My salary is between me and my employer. Of course. I'm sure it's all completely above board. Though I wonder what the tabloids would make of it. Billionaire CEO in inappropriate relationship with employee half his age. He paused. Well, not half, but close enough for a good headline. Is there a point to this conversation? Mia asked coldly. The point is this. Julian is making enemies. Powerful enemies. And unfortunately, you're in the line of fire. But it doesn't have to be that way. Elias leaned in closer, his voice dropping. I need access to Julian's private server. Just for an hour. There's an algorithm he's been developing. Nothing he'd miss, really. Just some code that could be very valuable to my company. You want me to help you steal from Julian? Mia's voice was flat with disbelief. I want you to help yourself. In exchange, I'll make sure no embarrassing stories leak to the press. No one questions your relationship with Julian. No one suggests that you're taking advantage of a vulnerable single father. No one calls Child Protective Services with concerns about Leo's care. The blood drained from Mia's face. You wouldn't. I would hate to, Elias said smoothly. But desperate times call for desperate measures. And Julian has something I need. You can make this easy, or you can make it hard. Either way, I get what I want. The only question is how much collateral damage there is along the way. He pulled out a business card and tucked it into her grocery basket. Think about it. You have 48 hours. After that, I start making phone calls. He walked away, leaving Mia standing frozen in the produce aisle, her heart pounding and her mind racing. She didn't tell Julian. Not at first. She told herself it was because she didn't want to worry him when he was already dealing with investor rebellion. But the truth was more complicated than that. The truth was that Elias's words had struck a nerve. Was her relationship with Julian inappropriate? Was she taking advantage of the situation? Was she really just a waitress playing dress-up in a world where she didn't belong? For 2 days, she agonized. She considered going to the police, but what would she say? That a businessman had made veiled threats? That he'd suggested she might face scrutiny? None of it was actionable. She considered quitting, walking away before this whole situation could explode and hurt the people she'd come to love. But every time she looked at Leo's trusting face, every time she saw Julian's growing confidence in his role as a father, she couldn't do it. On the 3rd day, Elias made good on his threat. Mia was in the penthouse with Leo, working on his astronomy project, when Julian's phone rang. She watched his face go from curious to confused to absolutely furious in the span of 30 seconds. What do you mean someone called CPS? Julian's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. On what grounds? Mia's blood turned to ice. Leo, sensing something was wrong, tugged on her sleeve. What's happening? I don't know yet. Mia signed, but her hands were shaking. Julian was pacing now, his phone pressed to his ear. That's absurd. Leo is perfectly well cared for. He has regular checkups, therapy sessions, educational support. He stopped, listening. An anonymous tip claiming what? That he's isolated? That his care is being delegated to an unqualified staff member? His eyes cut to Mia, and she saw understanding dawn. I want to know who made this call, Julian said coldly. And I want them investigated for filing a false report. Yes, I'll cooperate fully with any investigation. My son's well-being is my top priority. Thank you. He hung up and stood very still for a moment. Julian, Mia started. Did Elias Vance approach you? His voice was eerily calm. There was no point in lying. Yes, at the grocery store. 2 days ago. And you didn't tell me. I thought I could handle it. You thought you could protect me. Julian's laugh was bitter. Mia, I don't need protection. I need honesty. What did he want? Mia explained the entire conversation, watching Julian's expression grow darker with every word. By the time she finished, his hands were clenched into fists. That son of a... He stopped himself, glancing at Leo. He threatened my son. He threatened you. To get to me. What's going on? Leo signed frantically. Dad, you're scaring me. Julian immediately dropped to his knees in front of Leo, his expression softening. I'm sorry, buddy. Everything's going to be okay. A man is trying to cause some trouble, but we're going to handle it. Nobody is going to take you away or hurt Mia or do anything bad. I promise. The mean man from the party? Leo signed. Yes, but he's not going to win. Okay. Leo nodded, but his eyes were still worried. After getting Leo settled with a movie, Julian pulled Mia into his office and closed the door. This is my fault, he said immediately. I put you in this position. I should have anticipated that Elias would target you. How could you have known? Because I know how he operates. He finds the weak point and exploits it. Julian's expression was anguished. And I made you the weak point by caring about you. By making it obvious how much you matter to Leo and to me. I'm not weak, Mia said firmly. And I'm not going to let him use me to hurt you or Leo. What are you saying? I'm saying we fight back. But we do it smart. What does he actually want? The algorithm I've been developing. It's a breakthrough in quantum encryption, worth billions in potential applications. If he gets his hands on it, he could reverse engineer it and beat me to market. Can you move it? Hide it somewhere he can't access it. I could, but that's not the point. The point is he threatened my son. He threatened you. I'm not going to let that slide. Mia saw something dangerous flash in Julian's eyes. The same cold calculation he probably used in boardrooms, but sharper now. Personal. What are you going to do? Julian's smile was nothing like his usual warmth. I'm going to remind Elias Vance why you don't mess with a thorn. The CPS investigation was resolved within 24 hours. It turned out that when you had extensive documentation of your child's care, medical records, therapy notes, educational progress reports, and a whole team of professionals willing to testify to Leo's well-being, false claims tended to fall apart quickly. But the damage was done. Leo had seen the investigators. He'd watched his father be questioned. And despite Julian and Mia's best efforts to shield him, he knew something was wrong. He became clingy and anxious. He stopped sleeping well. His drawings became darker, filled with sharp edges and shadows instead of stars and planets. Mia's heart broke watching him withdraw into himself, undoing weeks of progress. And then Elias made his final move. It was a Saturday afternoon. Julian had stepped out for an emergency board meeting, a last-ditch effort to save his investor relationships. Mia was with Leo in the penthouse, trying to coax him into working on a puzzle. Leo had just started to relax, his small hands placing pieces with careful concentration, when the building's fire alarm went off. Not the sound, Leo couldn't hear that, but the lights. Strobing red flashes throughout the penthouse, accompanied by vibrations from the alarm system. Leo's eyes went wide with panic. The puzzle pieces scattered as he jumped up, his hands flying in frantic, desperate signs. What's happening? What's wrong? Is there a fire? Are we going to die? It's okay, Mia signed quickly, fighting her own rising panic. It's probably just a drill. But we need to go downstairs just in case. She grabbed Leo's hand and headed for the door, but it wouldn't open. The electronic lock had engaged, a safety feature during fire alarms to prevent panic-induced fleeing into dangerous situations. Mia's heart raced. She tried the emergency override, but nothing happened. Why isn't it opening? Leo signed, his small face crumpling in terror. Are we trapped? No, it's just stuck. Let me call someone. But her phone had no signal, and the building's intercom was dead. The lights continued to strobe, red and harsh and relentless. Leo was starting to hyperventilate, his chest heaving. Mia pulled him into her arms, signing with one hand while holding him with the other. Look at me. Look at me, Leo. You're safe. I'm here. We're going to be fine. But even as she signed it, she felt cold dread pooling in her stomach. This wasn't a drill. This was Elias. It took Julian exactly 12 minutes to get from the board meeting back to his building. He'd received an alert on his phone, a custom notification he'd set up to monitor any unusual activity in the penthouse's security system. When he saw that the fire alarm had been triggered manually and the door locks had been overridden, he dropped everything and run. By the time he reached the building, fire trucks were pulling up and confused residents were streaming out into the street. My son is still up there, Julian told the fire chief, his voice tight with controlled panic. Top floor. The door is locked. I don't know if it's a real fire or... We're going in now, sir. Please stay back. But Julian couldn't stay back. He flashed his building access credentials and pushed past the firefighters, taking the emergency stairs two at a time. When he finally reached the penthouse door, jammed shut by the electronic lock, he could see through the small window that Mia had Leo pressed against her, his face buried in her shoulder. The lights were still strobing, but there was no smoke, no fire, just terror. Leo, Julian shouted, pounding on the door. Leo, Mia. Mia's head snapped up. She saw him through the window, and relief flooded her face. She signed something to Leo, who turned and saw his father. Dad, Leo signed frantically. Get us out. Please. A firefighter reached Julian with an override key. The lock clicked, and the door swung open. Leo threw himself into Julian's arms, sobbing silently, his small body shaking with the force of his fear. I've got you, Julian murmured, even though Leo couldn't hear him. He signed over his son's head to Mia. Are you hurt? No. Just scared. The fire chief appeared in the doorway. False alarm. Someone manually triggered the system from a remote access point. We're going to need to file a report. I know exactly who did this, Julian said, his voice deadly quiet. And I'm going to make sure they pay for it. After the firefighters left and the building's systems were restored, Mia got Leo settled in his room with his favorite blanket and his star projector. The boy was exhausted, his eyes red from crying, but he wouldn't let go of Mia's hand. Don't leave, he signed. Please don't leave. I'm not going anywhere, Mia promised. I'll stay right here until you fall asleep. She sat with him until his breathing evened out and his grip on her hand loosened. Only then did she carefully extract herself and slip out of the room. She found Julian in his office, his face illuminated by the glow of multiple monitors. He looked up when she entered, and she was struck by the combination of rage and helplessness in his expression. I found him, Julian said simply. Elias. He hired someone to hack the building's fire system. The digital trail is sloppy, almost like he wanted to be caught. Why would he want that? Because he's testing me, seeing how far I'll go to protect what's mine. Julian's hands clenched. He scared my son. He traumatized Leo just to prove a point. And now he's waiting to see if I'll retaliate or if I'll give him what he wants to make it stop. Mia moved closer, placing her hand over Julian's. What are you going to do? I'm going to destroy him, Julian said quietly. Not physically, not with violence. But I'm going to dismantle his company piece by piece until there's nothing left. I'm going to use every legal tool I have, every business connection, every ounce of leverage I've built up over the years. And when I'm done, Elias Vance will wish he'd never heard the name Thorne. There was something terrifying about the calm certainty in his voice. Julian, Mia said carefully, is revenge really the answer here? It's not revenge. It's protection. If I don't show him there are consequences, he'll just do it again. He'll target Leo again, or you, or the next person I care about. I have to draw a line. Mia understood the logic, but she also saw the dangerous path Julian was heading down. The same path that had consumed his father, that had turned business into war. There might be another way, she said slowly. What way? What if we give him what he wants? Julian stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Give him the algorithm? Mia, that's billions of dollars in intellectual property. Not the real one. A fake. Something that looks legitimate but doesn't actually work. We give it to him. He takes it and leaves us alone, and when he eventually realizes it's worthless, you'll have already secured your real algorithm and moved on. Julian was quiet for a long moment, considering. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. Not the cold, calculating smile from earlier, but something genuinely impressed. That's actually brilliant. Devious, but brilliant. I learned from the best, Mia said. You fight smart, not hard. Isn't that what you always say? I do say that. Julian stood and pulled her into his arms, resting his forehead against hers. Thank you. For being here. For protecting Leo. For seeing solutions when all I can see is threats. That's what family does, Mia said softly. Julian pulled back to look at her. Is that what we are? Family. Mia's heart raced. They were crossing into dangerous territory again, but after the events of the day, she was tired of pretending. I don't know what we are, she admitted. But I know that when Leo was scared, my first thought was protecting him. When you walked through that door, my first feeling was relief that you were okay. So maybe we're not family in the traditional sense, but we're something. Something real. Something worth fighting for, Julian added. Yes. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. It was their first real kiss, not interrupted by Leo or circumstances or fear. Just them, choosing each other in the middle of chaos. When they finally pulled apart, Julian's expression was determined. Okay, we do it your way. We give Elias his fake algorithm, neutralize the threat, and protect our family. But after this is over, after the summer ends and you're not my employee anymore, I'm going to ask you properly. Ask me what? To stay? To be part of this family for real. To build a life with me and Leo that's based on love, not contracts or salaries or any of this corporate warfare nonsense. Mia felt tears prick her eyes. That sounds like a pretty good future. Then let's fight for it, Julian said. The plan came together quickly. Julian worked with his head of security and his best programmers to create a convincing fake algorithm. Something that looked legitimate enough to pass initial inspection, but would fall apart under real-world testing. It was elegant, complex, and completely worthless. Meanwhile, Mia's job was to sell it. She reached out to Elias, using the business card he'd given her. They met in a coffee shop, neutral territory, where Mia could control the situation. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't call," Elias said, settling into the chair across from her with his overpriced espresso. "I needed time to think," Mia said. "What you're asking me to do isn't easy. But you're here, which means you're smart enough to see which way the wind is blowing." Mia took a breath, channeling every ounce of acting ability she possessed. Julian's been distracted. The situation with Leo, the board pressure, everything. He's not paying as close attention to security as he usually does. "I can get you access to his private server tomorrow night. He has a dinner meeting downtown. Won't be home until late." Elias leaned forward, interest gleaming in his eyes. "And the algorithm?" "It's there, in a folder labeled Project Nexus. He thinks it's secure, but..." Mia shrugged. "I know the passwords. Why are you doing this?" Elias asked suspiciously. "Loyalty isn't usually for sale this cheaply." "It's not about loyalty," Mia said, meeting his eyes steadily. "It's about survival. Julian is going down. Everyone can see it. The board is losing confidence. Investors are jumping ship, and I don't want to be collateral damage when the whole thing crashes. You're offering me a way out. I'm taking it." It was a good lie, built on truths that Elias wanted to believe. And he bought it. "Smart girl," he said, smiling. "Tomorrow night, then. Send me the access codes, and make sure the building's security is lenient." "Done," Mia said. They shook hands, and Mia walked away feeling dirty and triumphant in equal measure. The next night played out exactly as planned. Elias's hired hacker accessed the penthouse's server remotely, downloaded the fake algorithm, and disappeared into the digital ether. Julian's security team monitored every step, documenting the theft with timestamps and digital fingerprints. By the time Elias realized he'd been duped, Julian had already filed a lawsuit for corporate espionage, armed with irrefutable evidence. The case would take months to wind through the courts, but the damage to Elias's reputation was immediate. Investors pulled out. Business partners distanced themselves. The man who'd threatened Leo, who'd terrorized a child to gain leverage, found himself isolated and exposed. Justice, it turned out, didn't require revenge. Just patience and strategic thinking. 3 days after Elias's downfall began, Julian called Mia into his office. She went with some trepidation. They'd barely had time to talk since everything had gone down. Julian had been consumed with legal meetings and damage control, while Mia had focused on helping Leo process the trauma of the fire alarm incident. "Sit," Julian said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. The formal tone made Mia nervous. This felt like a business meeting, not a personal conversation. Julian pulled out a check and slid it across the desk. Mia looked down and felt her stomach drop. $50,000. "What is this?" she asked. "A bonus," Julian said. "For everything you've done. For protecting Leo during the fire alarm. For your role in stopping Elias. For going above and beyond the scope of your original employment." Mia stared at the check, then up at Julian. "You're paying me off. I'm compensating you fairly for." "No." Mia stood abruptly. "No, you're reducing what we've been through to a transaction. You're putting a price tag on my feelings, on my relationship with Leo, on everything we've built together." "Mia, that's not what I'm..." "Isn't it?" Her voice cracked. "The summer's almost over. You promised we'd figure this out when I wasn't your employee anymore. But here you are, writing me a check like I'm just another service provider you're dismissing. I'm trying to do the right thing." Julian stood too, his frustration matching hers. "I'm trying to make sure you're taken care of, that you have financial security after everything you've sacrificed. I don't want your money, Julian. I never wanted your money." Mia's eyes filled with tears. I thought we wanted the same thing. A family. A real family. But I can see now that I was just fooling myself. I'm still just the waitress from Jerry's diner, and you're still the billionaire who thinks everything can be solved with a big enough check. That's not fair, isn't it? Mia grabbed her purse. "I quit. Effective immediately. I'll send someone to pick up my things." Mia, wait. But she was already walking toward the elevator, her vision blurred with tears. Julian didn't follow her. And that hurt most of all. Mia made it halfway to the elevator before she heard the sound. Not a voice. She wouldn't have stopped for a voice. But a small hand, slapping desperately against a wall. She turned to see Leo running down the hallway in his pajamas, his face streaked with tears. "Don't go," he signed frantically. "Please don't go. Please." Mia's heart shattered. She dropped to her knees as Leo threw himself into her arms. "I have to," she signed, even though the words felt like knives. "Your dad and I, we can't work together anymore. But you said you'd stay? You promised. You said we were family." "Leo, was it a lie?" Leo pulled back, his small face devastated. "Was it all a lie? Do you not love us?" "I do love you," Mia signed, tears streaming down her own face now. "So much. More than you know. Then why are you leaving?" It was the simplest, most devastating question in the world. "Because I'm scared," Mia said out loud, even though Leo couldn't hear her. She signed it anyway. "Because I'm scared of getting hurt. Because I don't know if your dad and I want the same things. Because I'm just a waitress and he's Julian Thorne, and maybe I don't belong in this world." "You belong with us," Leo signed fiercely. "You're supposed to be with us. Please, Mia. Please don't go." "Leo, buddy, come here." Julian's voice came from behind them. He'd followed after all, though he'd given them space. He knelt down beside them and signed to Leo. "Can you give me and Mia a few minutes to talk? Alone?" Leo looked between them, his face fearful. "Promise you'll fix it?" Julian glanced at Mia, and she saw vulnerability in his eyes that matched her own. "I promise I'll try," he signed. Leo nodded reluctantly and went back to his room, though Mia could see him watching from the doorway. Julian turned to Mia, and when he spoke, his voice was raw. "You're right. About the check, about me trying to fix everything with money. That's my default setting, and it's wrong." He took a breath. "But you're wrong about something too. You think you don't belong here, in my world. But Mia, you've never been in my world. I've been in yours. You've been teaching me how to live, how to connect, how to be human instead of just successful. You've brought warmth and laughter and love into a place that was cold and empty. You don't need to fit into my world. You've been creating a new one that's better than anything I had before." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, not a check this time, but a small velvet box. Mia's breath caught. "I wasn't going to do this tonight," Julian said. "I had a whole plan, candlelight dinner, romantic setting, the works. But I'm learning that the best moments don't wait for perfect timing." He opened the box to reveal a ring, simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the light. "Mia Collins, I love you. Not because you helped me with my son, not because you're good at your job, but because you challenge me and surprise me and make me want to be a better man. I love the way you sign stories to Leo, the way you always smell like coffee from the diner, the way you see people that everyone else overlooks. I love you, and I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me?" Mia looked at the ring, then at Julian's hopeful, terrified face, then down the hall where Leo was watching with huge eyes. "I'm still going to work at Jerry's sometimes," she said. "I'm not going to give up who I am. I wouldn't want you to. And I'm going to mess up your fancy penthouse with my mess and my chaos." "Good. It needs more chaos. And I'm going to argue with you when you're wrong, which is probably going to be often. I'm counting on it." Mia felt a smile breaking through her tears. "Then yes. Yes, I'll marry you." Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, they looked up to see Leo jumping up and down in his doorway, signing, "Yes, yes, yes," over and over again. They opened their arms, and Leo ran into them, the three of them collapsing into a tangle of hugs and tears and laughter. "Are we really going to be a family?" Leo signed when they finally calmed down. "We already are," Mia signed back. "We have been for a while now. This just makes it official." "Good," Leo signed. "Because I already told my friends at school that you were going to be my mom." Mia and Julian exchanged glances over his head. "A little presumptuous, don't you think?" Julian said, though he was smiling. Leo just grinned and signed. "I knew you'd figure it out eventually. Grown-ups are slow sometimes." Out of the mouths of babes indeed. 6 months later, the wedding was small and perfect. Not at a fancy hotel or a grand estate, but at Jerry's 24-hour diner, the place where everything had begun. Jerry had closed down for the afternoon, and the usual chaos of the diner had been transformed. The booths were decorated with simple white flowers and twinkling lights. The jukebox played soft music. And booth 4, the booth where Julian and Leo had sat that fateful night, had been reserved for the ceremony. Mia walked down the aisle between the tables in a simple white dress, carrying a bouquet of daisies. She'd refused the fancy designer gowns, preferring something that felt like her. Julian waited at the front, looking impossibly handsome in a suit that, while still expensive, was noticeably less formal than his usual corporate armor. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and he signed, "You're beautiful." Mia signed back, "You're not so bad yourself." But the real star of the show was Leo, who served as ring bearer with such serious concentration that several guests had to suppress smiles. He'd practiced his job for weeks, determined to get it perfect. When he successfully delivered the rings without dropping them, he threw his hands up in victory, and the entire diner erupted in applause, not hearing it, but seeing it, feeling the vibrations of joy through the floor. The ceremony itself was conducted in both spoken English and ASL, with an interpreter ensuring that Leo could follow every word. When Julian and Mia exchanged vows, they signed them as well as spoke them. "I promise to listen, even when it's hard," Mia signed. "I promise to stay present, even when work calls," Julian signed back. "I promise to love your chaos," she signed. "I promise to bring warmth to your order," he signed. And when the officiant pronounced them married, Leo was the first to sign. Finally, "Can we eat cake now?" The reception was everything a wedding at a diner should be. Burgers and fries alongside fancy appetizers, coffee served in the same mugs Mia had used during her waitressing days, and pie instead of a traditional wedding cake. Mia's friends from her college days mixed with Julian's business associates, with Jerry playing host and unofficial grandfather to the whole affair. The usual class barriers that might have made such a gathering awkward seemed to meld away in the warm, greasy spoon atmosphere. At one point, Mia found herself standing at the counter where she'd worked so many shifts, Julian's arm around her waist, watching Leo teach a group of very serious business people how to sign chicken nuggets. "Did you ever imagine this?" Julian asked. "When you were working here, dealing with difficult customers and dreaming about paying off your student loans, did you ever imagine you'd end up here? Married to a billionaire at my old workplace." Mia smiled. "Can't say that was on my bingo card. But then again, I never imagined a lot of things. Like falling in love with a workaholic CEO, or becoming a mom to the sweetest 7-year-old on the planet, or finding out that family isn't about blood or money. It's about showing up and listening and choosing each other every day." "That sounds like a vow." "I guess it is." Julian kissed her temple. "Speaking of which, I got you a wedding present." "Julian, we said no gifts." "It's not that kind of gift." He pulled out an envelope. "Open it." Inside was a deed, not to a house or property, but to Jerry's 24-hour diner. Mia stared at it, confused. "I don't understand." "Jerry's been wanting to retire," Julian explained. "But he couldn't afford to until he found the right buyer. Someone who would keep the place running, keep the staff employed, maintain its character. I bought it. For you. For us. If you want it." "Jerry knew about this?" "He suggested it, actually. Said the diner deserves an owner who understands what it means to the community. Someone who knows that it's not just about serving food. It's about providing a place where people can be seen and heard." Mia felt tears welling up. "You bought me a diner for a wedding present." "Technically, I bought us a diner. I thought we could run it together." "Well, you'd run it. I'd just occasionally show up and fail at making coffee." "This is insane." "Is it? You love this place. And I love you. And Leo loves the chocolate chip pancakes." It seemed logical. Mia laughed through her tears and threw her arms around his neck. "I love you. You ridiculous, wonderful man. Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." As the afternoon faded into evening, Mia found herself in booth 4 with her new family. Julian on one side, Leo on the other, leftover wedding cake and cold fries scattered on the table between them. Leo was drawing on a napkin, designing what he called the new Jerry's logo, with space themes incorporated. Julian was checking his phone, but only briefly before putting it away again. Progress, Mia thought with a smile. And Mia just sat there, taking it all in. The diner that had been her salvation during hard times was now her future. The man who'd been a stranger in an expensive suit was now her husband. The scared, angry little boy was now her son, currently signing to himself while he drew, his face peaceful and content. "Hey," Julian said, nudging her gently. Where'd you go? Just thinking, Mia said. About languages. Languages? Yeah. I thought ASL was the only language I'd need to learn to connect with Leo. But I was wrong. There are so many languages. The language of patience, of showing up, of choosing to see people instead of overlooking them. The language of love that transcends words or signs or any traditional communication. She looked at her family, this beautiful, imperfect, unconventional family they'd built together. I think we've created our own language, she continued. The language of us. And it's my favorite one I've ever learned. Julian signed. Mine too. Leo looked up from his drawing and sighed. Are we going to sit here being mushy all night, or can we get more ice cream? Mia and Julian exchanged glances and burst out laughing. Ice cream, they both signed together. Because that was the language of their family. Laughter and love, chaos and comfort, serious moments and silly ones, all mixed together in the beautiful mess of real life. As they headed to the counter to order dessert, Leo between them holding both their hands, Mia caught sight of their reflection in the diner's window. A family, not because of blood or money or conventional definitions, but because they'd chosen each other, learned each other's languages, and built something new together. And that, Mia thought, was the best translation of love she'd ever known. Years later, when people asked Mia how she'd gone from waitress to wife of a tech billionaire, she never told them it was a fairy tale. She told them it was hard work and showing up and learning to communicate across different worlds. She told them about a little boy who taught her that listening was more important than hearing, and a father who learned that success meant nothing without connection. But mostly, she told them about a night in a diner when a plate of fries changed everything. Because sometimes, the smallest gestures of understanding, taking the time to see someone's frustration, to speak their language, to really listen, can transform not just a moment, but an entire life. The sign for family in ASL is two hands forming the letter F, then moving in a circle to connect. It's a beautiful gesture, separate elements coming together to form something complete. That's what they were, separate elements, a waitress, a CEO, a deaf child, who came together and formed something complete. A family. And they lived, not happily ever after in some perfect fairy tale way, but happily in the messy, beautiful, challenging, rewarding way that real families do. Jerry's 24-hour diner stayed open. Leo grew up to become an astrophysicist, using both his hearing aids, which he eventually chose to try, and sign language to communicate with colleagues around the world. Julian learned to balance work and family, becoming known as much for his advocacy for accessibility in tech as for his business acumen. And Mia? She ran the diner and raised her son and loved her husband and lived a life that was far richer than any bank account could measure. Because she'd learned the most important language of all, the language of showing up, of really seeing people, of love that speaks through actions more than words. The language of us.